My name is Evelyn Kingsley, and I'm 26 years old. This is the story of how my brother slammed me into a wall over dinner, and how, in destroying me, he demolished his own life. Before everything shattered, my life looked respectable. On paper, I was doing fine. I worked as a dental hygienist at a family practice in suburban Cleveland. It wasn't glamorous, but I liked the neatness of it, the routine, the tiny satisfactions, a stubborn stain lifted from enamel, a nervous patient leaving with a relieved smile. I rented a small apartment with a roommate, had a boyfriend who loved me, and every Tuesday night, I went home. Home was my dad's old house. 3 bedrooms, faded wallpaper, creaky hardwood floors, and a maple tree Mom planted when Jude and I were kids. My mother had died of a stroke 3 years earlier, and after the funeral, those Tuesday dinners became our lifeline. Dad cooked like he was trying to feed his grief out of existence. Jude brought expensive wine. I brought desserts and stories about difficult patients. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like we were holding on to something. Jude is 5 years older than me. Growing up, he was everything a big brother is supposed to be. He taught me how to ride a bike, running alongside me until his lungs burned. He helped me with algebra, even when he'd rather be out with friends. He scared off a boy in middle school who called me Braceface for 3 months straight. Back then, I would have bet my life that Jude would always protect me. Adulthood changed him. By the time I was 26, Jude was 31 and thriving as a regional sales director for a pharmaceutical company. He had the gym body, the tailored suits, the glossy Instagram life with his glamorous wife, Vanessa, who treated every room like a runway, and our childhood home like a motel. Dad, at 62, was not thriving. He was fine, according to himself. But fine didn't cover the roof that needed repairs, the old furnace that groaned like it was giving its last confession, or the property taxes that went up every year. I noticed him wearing the same worn-out jacket all winter. I noticed how carefully he measured coffee grounds in the morning, how he flinched when the mail came. "Dad, are you okay with money?" I asked him once, lingering in the doorway of the kitchen as he rinsed plates. He didn't look up. "I'm managing, Evie, don't you worry." Which, of course, guaranteed that I would. Jude worried too, but not in the same way. He saw numbers, not history. Equity, not memories. It started with casual comments at dinner. "Dad, you know what this place is worth?" he'd say, gesturing around with his wine glass. "You could sell, move into one of those nice retirement communities. Pool, gym, people your own age to play cards with. No more shoveling snow." Dad would smile weakly. "I like my own bed." Jude would roll his eyes. "Sentimentality is expensive." Each week, the tone sharpened. Less suggestion, more insistence. I'd feel something coil tighter in my chest every time he brought it up. This house wasn't just bricks and wood. It was Mom's laughter in the hallway, the height marks on the pantry door, the dent in the baseboard from the time Jude crashed my pink scooter indoors. Selling it felt like erasing her. Then came that Tuesday in March. The air smelled like meatloaf and ketchup. The TV in the living room murmured an evening news report, low enough to be ignored, loud enough to remind us that the rest of the world was still functioning just fine. We sat in our usual formation, Dad at the head of the table, in his faded blue sweater, Jude to his right, phone face down beside his plate, like he deserved a medal for that restraint. Me to his left, mashed potatoes on my plate, mashed emotions in my chest. I watched Dad push peas around with his fork, not really eating. "Dad," I said, setting my utensils down, my heart started to race. "I've been thinking." He looked up, wary but hopeful. "That sounds serious." "My roommate's moving to Portland next month," I said. "The rent there is insane, and honestly, I've been feeling guilty about you being here alone. What if I move back in for a while? We could split utilities. I could help with maintenance, appointments, whatever you need." Dad's eyes brightened behind his reading glasses, and for a second the years seemed to fall off his face. "Evelyn, sweetheart, I couldn't ask that of you." "You're not asking. I'm offering," I said, and meant it. The idea had started as a worry and turned into a quiet sense of purpose. Coming back home didn't feel like regression. It felt like responsibility. A glass hit the table harder than necessary. Ice cubes rattled. "Absolutely not," Jude said. The warmth fled the room like someone had opened a window in winter. Dad and I both turned to him. "Excuse me?" I said. Jude leaned back in his chair, jaw tight, a vein pulsing at his temple. I knew that vein. It was the same one that bulged when a coach benched him in high school, when Mom told him no and meant it. He needs to sell this place, Evie, Jude said. Not dig in deeper. You moving back is just enabling him to keep living beyond his means. He is sitting right here, Dad said quietly. His fork trembled in his hand. This isn't about enabling, I shot back. It's about helping. Jude snorted. Helping would be convincing him to cash out while he still can. Do you have any idea what this house is worth? He could live comfortably for the rest of his life. It's not just a house, I said, feeling the heat rise up my chest. Oh God, here we go. Jude's lips curled. The shrine to Mom. Dad flinched, like someone had physically struck him. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the linoleum. What the hell is wrong with you? Jude rose to face me, all 6'2" of him, muscles tense under his pressed shirt. He'd spent the last decade sculpting his body at the gym. I'd spent mine hunched over patients' mouths. The difference was suddenly obvious. What's wrong with me? He said. I'm the only one thinking practically. You want him to cling to this place until it falls apart around him? This is our home, I said, my voice shaking. Where Mom is dead, Evelyn. His voice was flat, cold. This house won't bring her back. Dad's eyes filled with tears. He looked down at his plate. Something inside me snapped. At least I'm not trying to shove our father into some facility so I can get my hands on his equity, I said. The words came out before I could stop them, honed by weeks of swallowed suspicions. The accusation hung in the air like a lit match dangling over gasoline. Jude's face flushed an ugly shade of red, then darkened toward purple. Take that back. Why? I asked, crossing my arms, refusing to step back. Did I hit too close to home? I've seen the way you look at this place, like it's a check you're waiting to cash. What's the plan, Jude? Get Dad to sell, then suddenly need a loan for that lakefront cabin Vanessa keeps posting about on Instagram? Dad pushed his chair back, hands raised. Kids, please. Stay out of this, Dad, Jude muttered, eyes locked on me. Evelyn is about to learn what happens when she runs her mouth. My heart hammered, but I refused to look away. What are you going to do, Jude? Shove me around like when we were kids? Real mature for a 31-year-old. I'm warning you, he said, stepping closer. I could smell the whiskey on his breath, sharp and sour beneath the meatloaf. I took a breath, every nerve in my body screaming at me to shut up. Instead, I did the opposite. Dad would be ashamed of what you've become. I didn't scream it. I said it calmly, deliberately, like a sentence I'd practiced in the mirror. I wanted it to land exactly where it hurt most. It did. Jude lunged forward, grabbing my sweater with both hands. His fist bunched the fabric at my collarbone. His face was inches from mine, eyes wild in a way I'd never seen before. The boy who taught me to ride a bike was gone. In his place was a stranger wearing my brother's features. You think you're so righteous now? He hissed. My back was already aching from where he'd shoved me once. I saw Dad moving in the corner of my eye, reaching, too slow. Say it again, Jude snarled. I looked him right in the eyes. I said Dad would be ashamed of what you've become. The sound that followed wasn't just a slam. It was bone meeting plaster. It was a crack that seemed to split the world in half. White pain exploded behind my eyes. For one surreal second, I saw the framed family photo on the wall, tilt and fall, glass shattering as if in slow motion. Then everything went black. The first thing I remember is light, too bright, too white, slicing through the darkness I'd been floating in. Then sound trickled in, beeping, soft footsteps, a low murmur, like people talking underwater. I tried to open my eyes. One lid obeyed, the other felt glued shut. Evelyn, honey, can you hear me? My father's voice, thin, frayed, nothing like the steady baritone that used to wake us up for school. I tried to speak. What came out was a dry, broken croak. Duh! He choked on a sob. Nurse, she's awake. My girl is awake. Shapes sharpened. White ceiling, blurred fluorescent lights, the stiffness of hospital sheets, a plastic taste in my mouth. My throat felt like sandpaper. Something tugged at my arm. An IV. Another thing at my neck. Monitors. Wires. Then another face leaned over me, familiar and wrecked. Alex. His dark hair was a mess, sticking up like he'd been dragging his hands through it for days. Stubble shaded his jaw, and deep purple crescents lived under his eyes. He was wearing the faded Ohio State hoodie I'd bought him for his birthday 3 years earlier. Hey, I whispered. His lips trembled. He hit the nurse call button 3 times, like maybe the first 2 wouldn't count. Oh my God, Evie. Oh my God, you're here. His voice broke. You scared the hell out of me. I blinked slowly, trying to process. My brain felt like someone had taken a perfectly organized filing cabinet and shaken it until all the folders spilled on the floor. "What happened?" I forced out. Dad turned away, hand covering his mouth. Alex swallowed hard. You, there was an accident at dinner. In that moment, the word accident sounded like a lie, but my brain was too foggy to argue. A woman in blue scrubs appeared by my bed. Nurse, calm eyes, efficient hands. "Miss Kingsley, I'm Nurse Harper. You're at St. Luke's Hospital. We've been taking care of you. How are you feeling?" I tried to find a word that wasn't terrible. "Floaty." She smiled gently. "That's understandable. I'm going to page Dr. Rodriguez. He'll explain more, okay? For now, just breathe. You're safe." Safe. I glanced at Dad. His eyes were red-rimmed, his shoulders slumped, his blue sweater rumpled like he'd been sleeping in it. He tried to smile. It came out crooked. "I'll be right outside," he said. I need a minute." He left the room like an old man. When did he start walking like that? Had he always? And I never noticed? Alex sat down and took my hand, careful, as if I might crumble. "How much do you remember?" he asked. I searched my mind. The dining room. Meatloaf. Jude's voice. Sharp as broken glass. I said Dad would be ashamed of what you've become. The slam. Then, nothing. "Jude," I whispered. Alex's jaw clenched. His thumb tightened around my fingers. "Yeah." The door opened again, and a middle-aged man with kind, tired eyes and a gray streak at his temple walked in, flipping through a tablet. "Miss Kingsley," he said. "I'm Dr. Rodriguez, your neurologist. It's good to finally meet you while you're awake." Finally. Something in my chest twisted. "How long?" I asked. He pulled a chair closer, sitting so his face was level with mine. "You've been here for a little over 3 weeks," he said gently. "You were in a coma." The words didn't land at first. 3 weeks felt like a typo. 3 weeks, I repeated slowly. "Yes, on the night you were brought in, you underwent emergency surgery for a severe traumatic brain injury. The impact caused a skull fracture and intracranial bleeding. We had to relieve pressure on your brain." I stared at him. Traumatic brain injury. The phrase sounded clinical and distant, like it belonged to someone in a textbook, not me. "Will I be okay?" I asked, my voice small. He folded his hands. I hated how careful he looked. "You are very fortunate, Miss Kingsley. You survived a life-threatening injury. The surgery went well, and the fact that you're awake and responsive is a very positive sign." "But," I whispered. "With an injury like this, there can be lasting effects," he said. "You may notice problems with motor skills, speech, memory, fatigue. With therapy, we expect significant improvement, but—" He hesitated. Alex's grip on my hand tightened. "But full recovery isn't guaranteed," he finished quietly. The word permanent wasn't spoken, but I heard it anyway. It slid under my skin and settled in my bones, heavy as lead. I'm a dental hygienist," I said, as if that fact could fight the diagnosis. "My hands, they have to be steady. I need to see clearly. Focus." "We'll cross that bridge later," Dr. Rodriguez said. "Right now we focus on healing. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. It will be hard work. Some days will feel like progress. Some will feel like setbacks. But you are not alone in this." After he left, the room felt too quiet. I stared at my hand entwined with Alex's. It trembled slightly, and I wasn't doing it on purpose. "Evie," he whispered, his eyes full of a pain I'd never seen there. "You're here. That's all that matters. We'll handle everything else." "You could have left," I rasped, the thought slipping out before I could stop it. 3 weeks. He actually laughed, a wet, disbelieving sound. "Left? And do what? Go back to my apartment, play video games, pretend the woman I love wasn't fighting for her life? No, not an option." Tears blurred my vision. "I look awful," I muttered. "Yeah," he said softly, brushing a stray hair from my forehead. "You look like the bravest person I've ever seen." Days blurred after that. Machines were disconnected slowly. Tubes removed. I learned how to sit up without my vision spinning. I learned how to move my legs without feeling like they belonged to someone else. I learned that talking more than a few sentences at a time was exhausting. Thinking was exhausting. Breathing sometimes felt like a task on a to-do list. Dad came every day. He brought me terrible coffee and good stories. He'd sit by my bed, hands folded, eyes darting between my face and the monitors. "I should have stopped it," he said one afternoon, eyes shining. "I should have seen it coming. I failed you." You didn't shove me into a wall, I said, carefully forming each word. The effort of speaking felt like lifting weights underwater. That's on him. He's my son too, Dad whispered. I failed both of you. Sometimes he would fall asleep in the chair, his chin on his chest. I watched his chest rise and fall and wondered how much more his heart could take. I didn't see Jude. For a while, my brain filled the gap with lies. Maybe he was in another hospital. Maybe he was too ashamed to come in. Maybe he was sending flowers and I just hadn't noticed. Then one morning, I woke up to find Dad staring at a stack of papers, his mouth pressed into a line. What's that? I asked. He jumped, then sighed. Court documents, he said. About Jude. The word court snapped me into focus. He what? Dad rubbed his eyes. He was arrested that night, Evelyn. Aggravated assault. He was drunk. The police. They saw what happened. The hole in the wall. The blood. His voice cracked. I put up the house as collateral for his bail. Our house. The irony made my head spin more than the injury. The house he wanted you to sell, I said. Dad looked like he might crumble. He's still my son. I wanted to be angry at him for that. Instead, all I felt was a weary, bone-deep sadness. Is he sorry? I asked. Dad looked away. I don't know, he said. I found out more in fragments. From overheard conversations, from Alex's clenched jaw, from the way Dad went quiet when I asked too many questions. Jude's company had put him on leave. There were whispers of termination, depending on how the case went. Vanessa had gone on a break, staying with her parents in Connecticut. The prosecutor was pressing hard. The injuries, the coma, the surgery, the permanent damage, they didn't look like a momentary lapse. They looked like a near murder. 3 weeks after I woke up, they transferred me to inpatient rehabilitation at Cleveland Heights Recovery Center. It felt like being demoted to a different level of difficulty. Being a dental hygienist, I thought I understood rehab. I used to hand out brochures. Physical therapy will help, I'd say. Just follow the exercises. I had no idea. My hands shook as I tried to hold a toothbrush. My tongue felt thick when I tried to say certain words. Walking down the hallway left me sweating and breathless. I cried the first time I dropped a plastic cup 3 times in a row. It rolled away from my bed, mocking me. It's okay to be frustrated, my occupational therapist said. But every time you try, you're building new pathways. That's what matters. It didn't feel like building. It felt like failing slower. Dad visited every afternoon, Alex every evening after work. They overlapped sometimes, talking in low voices in the corner while I squeezed a rubber ball until my hands stopped obeying. The only person who didn't visit was Jude. Until technically she did. Vanessa showed up one Wednesday. I saw her in the reflection of the dark TV before I heard her voice. Designer coat, flawless makeup, eyes darting around like the room might contaminate her. Evelyn, she said, stopping just inside the doorway, clutching her purse like a shield. I straightened as much as I could. You came, I said slowly. My tongue still tangled when I was tired. Jude wanted me to tell you he's sorry, she said, eyes flicking everywhere but my face. This whole thing has been really hard on him. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. Hard on him. Alex, who'd been sitting in the chair by my bed, actually laughed, sharp and humorless. Hard on him? Are you serious? Vanessa's cheeks flushed. He could lose everything. His job, his freedom. My career is gone, I interrupted, my voice a little stronger than usual. I can't hold a toothbrush without shaking. I forget words. I forget what I was saying mid-sentence. But yes, let's talk about Jude's hardships. You don't understand the pressure he's under, she snapped. Something inside me, brittle and raw and furious, snapped right back. Get out, I said. Vanessa blinked. What? Get out! My voice rang in the small room, more solid than anything I'd said in weeks. If all you came here to do is lobby for him, leave. Her mouth opened, then closed. She sniffed, turned on her heel, and walked out, heels clicking indignantly down the corridor. The silence she left behind felt clean. A week later, Jude's attorney knocked on the door of Alex's apartment, where we'd started spending weekends on a trial run for me possibly moving in. I was on the couch, legs propped up, a pounding headache pressing behind my eyes. Miss Kingsley, the lawyer said, stepping into the living room in an immaculate suit that probably cost more than my car, your brother is prepared to make this right. Alex moved to stand between us. Say what you came to say, he said flatly. The lawyer smiled like we were negotiating a contract, not my life. Full coverage of your medical expenses, lost wages, pain, and suffering. We're talking mid-6 figures. in exchange for dropping the criminal charges and allowing this to remain a family matter. I stared at him, then down at my trembling hands, my entire future stacked up against a number he probably rattled off daily. I thought about months of therapy, the career I'd lost, the nights Dad woke up screaming from the 911 call he couldn't forget, the hole in the wall, the way Jude had looked at me before he shoved me, like I was an obstacle, not a sister. No, I said. Miss Kingsley, he said smoothly, be reasonable. A criminal conviction helps no one. Think of your family. My family ended, I said quietly, when he put me through a wall and then tried to buy his way out of it. There's no deal. His smile finally faltered. You're making a mistake. I looked him right in the eyes. No, I said. Jude did. Alex walked him to the door. When it closed, I exhaled shakily. My head throbbed, but there was a strange, fierce clarity in my chest. For the first time since I woke up, I wasn't just surviving what Jude had done. I was choosing what happened next. The courthouse smelled like old paper and stress. I remember sitting in the hallway outside courtroom 4B, my palms sweating, my head aching from the fluorescent lights, Alex's arm wrapped around me like he was afraid I'd dissolve. Dad sat on my other side, twisting his wedding ring, Mom's ring, around and around his finger. Are you sure you're up for this? Alex whispered. No, absolutely not, but that didn't matter. Yes, I said, because someone had to tell the truth. When the bailiff opened the doors, everything inside me went cold. Jude was already seated at the defense table. He looked smaller. Not physically. He was still broad-shouldered, still wearing a tailored suit his lawyer had probably begged him to put on, but smaller, diminished, as though the months between the assault and now had carved out something essential inside him. He didn't look at me, not once. His attorney, perfect haircut, perfect posture, perfect arrogance, leaned over, whispering into Jude's ear. Vanessa sat behind them in a black dress, as if this were a funeral she wasn't sure how to mourn. Dad stared at Jude like he was looking at a stranger wearing his son's face. The prosecutor began with photos. The dining room wall, the jagged hole my skull had made, the streaks of my blood on the floor, my CT scans, dark patches of bleeding inside my skull. I heard a woman behind me gasp. I didn't turn around. The prosecutor spoke slowly, clearly, stacking facts like bricks. Severe head trauma, emergency craniotomy, 3-week coma, permanent neurological impact. Jude's lawyer stood. This is a tragedy, he said, as though rehearsed, but it is also an accident between siblings, a moment of mutual escalation, not a criminal act. He made it sound like I'd slipped on a banana peel into my brother's fist. Then came the part I knew would be brutal. They called me to the stand. Walking to the witness box felt like walking on glass. My legs trembled slightly, old nerves, old injury, and the courtroom watched every shaky step. I sat, swore in, folded my hands to hide the tremors. Ms. Kingsley, the prosecutor said gently, can you describe what happened that night? My voice came out soft but steady. We were eating dinner. My dad, he was having trouble financially. I offered to move back home to help. Jude didn't like that. I swallowed. We argued. He grabbed me. I told him Dad would be ashamed of what he'd become. And then, he slammed me, I said, into the wall. Did you provoke him physically in any way? No. Did you threaten him? No. Did he appear intoxicated? Yes. Did he stop after the first shove? No. I looked down. He grabbed me again. The defense attorney rose. I braced myself. Ms. Kingsley, he said with a sympathetic smile, so fake it made my skin crawl. You and your brother fought often as children, correct? I blinked. All siblings fight. And you were known to lose your temper? Objection, the prosecutor snapped. Sustained. The lawyer tried again. Isn't it true that you accused your brother of wanting your father's money? That wasn't an accusation, I said. It was the truth. He tilted his head. Or simply your interpretation. I felt heat rise in my chest. No, I saw him pushing our father to sell the house. I saw the texts he sent Vanessa about using the sale for a cabin. He wasn't thinking about Dad. He was thinking about himself. The defense attorney's smile faltered slightly. But you raised your voice. You stood up. You escalated. I stood up, I said, to walk away. He opened his mouth to continue, but the prosecutor cut in. We'll return to Ms. Kingsley. For now, let's let the medical evidence speak for itself. Relief washed through me as I stepped down. Then my father took the stand. Dad hadn't cried in public since Mom's funeral, but today his voice shook from the first word. Did you witness the assault? The prosecutor asked. Yes, Dad whispered. Did your daughter touch your son at any point prior to him grabbing her? No. Did she threaten him physically? No. Dad took a shaky breath. They were arguing. Evelyn said something Jude didn't want to hear. He got this look, this angry, red look, and then he shoved her so hard her head hit the wall. I didn't even understand what I was seeing until she collapsed. There was so much blood. His voice cracked. I thought she was dead. In the row behind us, Vanessa reached for a tissue, dabbing her eyes delicately. Then the prosecutor pressed play. The courtroom filled with Dad's voice on the 911 recording. Please, please hurry. My daughter. She's not breathing right. There's blood. Oh God, there's so much blood. My throat tightened. Someone behind me started sobbing. Alex reached for my hand and squeezed until my fingers hurt. Then Jude testified. He stood, straightening his tie, staring at some invisible point above the jury's heads. I never meant to hurt her, he said, voice thick with rehearsed remorse. She pushed me first. She threatened me. I reacted. I thought she was going to hit me. The lie hit me harder than the wall had. Dad bowed his head. Alex muttered under his breath. I stared at Jude, trying to reconcile the man on the stand with the boy who taught me to swim at Lake Erie. But he didn't look back. The prosecutor approached him slowly. Mr. Kingsley, you're claiming self-defense. Yes. Against your younger sister? Yes. Whose medical records show she was slammed backward? Yes. The prosecutor raised an eyebrow. How does someone attacking you end up being thrown backward? Jude hesitated. I don't know. It happened fast. Did you text your wife earlier that day about convincing your father to sell the house? Yes. And did you refer to the sale as a necessary liquidity event for your planned cabin purchase? Jude's jaw tensed. Yes. The prosecutor held up a printed screenshot. And this message, if Dad won't listen today, I'll make him listen. Does that refresh your memory? A ripple went through the courtroom. Jude swallowed hard. It was a figure of speech. The prosecutor leaned in. Is slamming your sister's head through a wall also just a figure of speech? Jude didn't answer. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. 4 hours of replaying evidence. 4 hours of weighing our lives. 4 hours of imagining the future I might never fully get back. When they returned, the foreman didn't look at Jude. Guilty, he said. Aggravated assault causing serious bodily injury. A sound ripped from Vanessa's throat, half sob, half gasp. Jude went gray. Then the judge delivered the sentence. 4 years in state prison. Dad closed his eyes. Alex squeezed my hand until it hurt. My breath trembled out of me, half relief, half heartbreak. Because justice isn't joy. Justice is truth, and truth can hurt as much as it heals. As they handcuffed Jude and led him away, he finally looked at me. I hope you're happy, he said. I wasn't. How do you feel happy when your brother is walking into a cell? But I did feel something else. Certainty. For the first time since that night, I knew I had done the right thing. The aftermath hit fast. Jude's company fired him the next day. Assaulting your own sister violated more than their code of conduct. Vanessa filed for divorce within a month, moving back to her parents' house. Their home went into foreclosure. The lake cabin he'd fantasized about? Gone, swallowed by legal fees. And Dad put his arms around me one night as we stood in the quiet kitchen, staring at the repaired wall. I'm proud of you, he whispered. Your mother would be too. I leaned against him, feeling the weight of everything finally start to shift. I hope so, I said softly. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. Healing doesn't happen in straight lines. It zigzags. It loops. It doubles back when you least expect it. Some mornings I woke up clear-headed, steady, almost normal. Other mornings, the headaches felt like someone was driving nails behind my eyes. But little by little, through therapy sessions, late-night tears, and long, quiet conversations with Dad and Alex, I began stitching a life back together. Not the life I had before, but a life I could live. 3 months after this trial, I officially moved into Alex's apartment. It wasn't glamorous, just a one-bedroom with mismatched furniture and a couch older than both of us. But it was warm, safe. Alex cleared the entire top shelf of the pantry for my snacks, installed grab bars in the shower, and set reminders on his phone for my medications. I don't want you to feel like a burden, he told me one night as he tucked a blanket around my legs. You're my life, Evie, not my responsibility, my choice. My throat tightened. I'd lost so much, but I hadn't lost him. Dad helped me pack my things from my old apartment. He carried boxes down the stairs slowly, with a stiffness that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with grief. You sure you want to move in with Alex? He asked quietly. I am, I said. Dad nodded. Good. He's a good man. Your mother would have liked him. And for once, the mention of Mom didn't feel like a stab. During the daytime, I focused on rehab, physical therapy for balance and strength, occupational therapy to retrain my shaking hands, speech therapy to untangle the sentences that sometimes slipped away mid-thought. I dropped a spoon in OT one afternoon, and instead of crying, I muttered, "Well, that's gravity for you." My therapist laughed. That's progress, she said. Humor counts. Slowly, the world got less blurry around the edges. But one truth crystallized early on. I couldn't return to dental hygiene. The tremors were too unpredictable. My depth perception still glitched under fluorescent lights, and sometimes, mid-task, my concentration snapped like a frayed thread. Letting go of that career hurt. I'd built it with my own two hands, hands that no longer obeyed the way they used to. But then an unexpected door opened. My rehab center needed part-time help navigating insurance claims. Patients often struggled to understand their coverage, and I, someone who had memorized every step of my own medical maze, knew exactly what they needed. I started working remotely as a medical insurance coordinator, 3 hours a day at first, then 4, then 6. The pace was up to me. On bad days, I could lie down between calls. On good days, I could help people understand benefits, appeal denials, get clarity, get hope. It wasn't the job I'd envisioned, but it mattered, and it fit the new version of me. Dad and I became closer than we had ever been. He'd come over on Sundays with grocery bags and stories about his neighbors. Sometimes we cooked together, me chopping slowly and carefully, him humming off key. Other times we sat on the couch, watching old Jeopardy reruns, shouting out answers we both knew we were getting wrong. We avoided the topic of Jude for months, but the house came up. Dad couldn't manage everything alone, so one cold November morning, he called me. "Evie," he said, "do you think, maybe, you could come over and help me fix a few things?" Dad never asked for help, so of course I said yes. We spent that afternoon repainting the dining room. The same dining room. Dad held the paint tray. I rolled the wall in long, careful strokes. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both kept glancing at the section where Jude had slammed me. The patchwork repair was smooth now, but I could still feel the memory of it under my skin. "You did a good job fixing it," I said softly. Dad swallowed. "We did. Together." And something in me, something fragile, clicked back into place. Jude didn't disappear. Even in prison, he was a ghost haunting the corners of our conversations. Dad visited him every month. Came home looking exhausted, older, quieter. "He's surviving," Dad would say, but he never offered details unless I asked. And I rarely asked. I tried to imagine Jude in a cell. I tried to imagine him alone, without Vanessa, without his job, without the shiny life he'd curated like a storefront window. Part of me wondered if he thought about me, about that night, about the wall, about the words I'd said. Dad would be ashamed of what you've become. Dad told me once that Jude had started reading books in prison, that he worked in the laundry, that he'd shaved his hair shorter. But Dad never said he'd apologized. Not once. Life moved forward without him. Spring came, and with it, something unexpected. Alex proposed. It happened on a quiet morning, sunlight spilling into the kitchen, my hands wrapped around a mug of hot tea. Alex slid a small velvet box onto the table. My heart stuttered. "Evie," he said softly, "I don't know what our future looks like. Good days, bad days. I'm ready for all of it if you are." I opened the box. A delicate ring, simple, understated, sparkling in a way that felt earned. My eyes filled. My hands trembled, slightly, but not enough to stop me from reaching out. "Yes," I whispered. "Of course, yes." He pulled me into his arms, and for the first time since the injury, I felt like my life wasn't broken. It was rebuilding. We didn't set a wedding date immediately. Dad insisted on throwing us a small engagement dinner at the house. The house. The one Jude wanted to sell. The one that stood through grief, chaos, and blood. The one that now smelled like roasted chicken and Dad's cologne. Sarah from my old dental practice came. Mrs. Kowalski from next door came with Polish pastries. Even my rehab therapist stopped by with a card signed by half the staff. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't perfect, but it was ours. After dessert, Dad tapped his glass with a fork. "To Evelyn," he said, his voice steady. "To her strength, to her resilience, to her future." I swallowed around the lump in my throat. Alex squeezed my hand. Dad beamed. The dining room walls glowed warm in the lamplight. For the first time in years, the space felt whole again. Not because Jude was gone, but because I had survived. Jude was released early, 3 years served out of 4. Dad told me on the phone. He's moving to Phoenix, he said quietly. Got a job selling insurance. Says he wants a fresh start. I didn't feel relief or anger, just distance, a canyon that couldn't be crossed. Dad hesitated. He asked, well, he wondered if you might talk to him someday. I closed my eyes. Someday. Such a gentle word for something impossible. Maybe, I said. But we both knew I didn't mean soon. Maybe not ever. Because forgiveness takes 2 people, one to offer it and one to deserve it. Jude had never earned his half. Life settled into a rhythm. I worked from home. Alex and I planned small wedding ideas. Dad and I fixed parts of the house one weekend at a time. And slowly my body stopped feeling like an enemy. I still had bad days. Days where words slipped away or my hands shook so badly I couldn't type. But I learned to live with it, to breathe through it, to be more than what Jude did to me, more than the crack in the wall, more than the coma, more than the scar I still trace sometimes behind my hairline. 4 years after the assault, something shifted inside me. I was asked to speak at a brain injury support group. I wrote out notes, carefully, slowly, then stood in front of 20 strangers with stitches of their own. My name is Evelyn, I began, and I survived something that should have destroyed me. When I finished, a woman in the back came forward, tears streaming down her cheeks. My brother hurt me, she whispered. I've been thinking about dropping the charges, but hearing you, I realize I don't have to protect him from his choices. I hugged her gently. You deserve justice, I said. And so does he. And for the first time in 4 years, I believed it for myself too. When people talk about recovery, they like neat endings. A clean arc, a healed scar, a reconciled family, a moment where everything suddenly makes sense again. But that's not how life works. Not mine, anyway. What you get, if you're lucky, is a long road with broken pavement and bright patches. Moments of clarity. Moments of grief. Moments where the past sneaks up on you when you least expect it. I learned to let all of it coexist. The year Alex and I finally married, spring came early. Warm breezes, blossoming trees, the kind of weather that made everything feel possible. We held a tiny ceremony in Dad's backyard, under the maple tree my mother planted decades ago. Its branches spread wide like a guardian watching over us. My white dress wasn't extravagant. Simple lace, soft sleeves, nothing heavy. I needed to be able to breathe, to sway if I felt dizzy, to sit when I needed to. Alex looked at me like I was the beginning and end of every story. Dad stood up straighter than I'd seen in years. Our small circle of people gathered close, and Sarah from the dental practice, Christine, my college roommate who flew in from Seattle, Mrs. Kowalski, delivering prayers in Polish under her breath, a few of Alex's co-workers, my therapists, both invited, both crying by the vows. But one person didn't come, and he wasn't invited. Jude. His empty place in the world was felt, but not missed. Not anymore. Yet strangely, the absence didn't burn. It settled like a quiet acknowledgement, like the final page of a chapter already finished. After the ceremony, during the soft clatter of plates and laughter, Vanessa's card arrived. Neat handwriting, a short message. Congratulations, and I'm sorry for how I treated you at the hospital, truly. It wasn't enough, but it was something. People grow, I guess, even the ones who leave you bleeding on a tile floor. Dad gave a toast while raising a glass of sparkling water. To Evelyn, he said, my daughter who taught me that strength isn't measured by what you endure, but by what you choose after. He paused, his voice tightening. And to Alex, who chose her every day. Everyone raised their glasses. I felt tears slide down my cheeks, not from sadness, but from something softer, something like belonging. Later that night, after the guests left and Alex was washing dishes inside, Dad and I wandered into the dining room. We both looked at the far wall at the same time. The wall. You'd never know what happened there. The plaster was smooth. The paint matched perfectly. No shadow, no crack, no sign of the violence that once split our whole world open. Sometimes I still hear it, Dad admitted quietly. That sound. When he... I know, I said. We stood in silence for a long moment. Do you ever think about him? I asked. Dad sighed. Every day, he's still my son. I know. But he's not the boy I raised, Dad added. Not anymore. I nodded. He wasn't that boy when he pushed me either. Dad blinked hard. You're right. He made choices, I said gently, and he keeps making them. Dad swallowed. He wants to talk. You don't have to, but He does ask. I didn't speak for a moment. Outside, the maple tree rustled softly in the breeze. I don't hate him, I said finally, but I can't forgive a man who hasn't apologized. Dad nodded. That's fair. Forgiveness isn't sainthood. Forgiveness is honesty. And the truth was, if Jude wanted redemption, he needed to build it himself, brick by brick, without using me as scaffolding. Months passed. I kept writing. Not the way I used to. My thoughts sometimes tangled, my words occasionally slipping away, but enough to fill small notebooks with fragments of memories. Mostly good ones. Jude teaching me to swim at Lake Erie. Family road trips with Mom singing old songs. Summer nights on the porch with fireflies floating like sparks in the dark. Those memories didn't erase what he did, but they reminded me that trauma doesn't get the final say in defining a person or a family. People do. One afternoon at the support group, a young man approached me. His sister had suffered a concussion in a bar fight. He blamed himself for not protecting her. He cried when he talked. He shook when he sat. You said something once, he told me, that recovery isn't about going back to who you were. It's about learning who you are now. That saved me. His voice cracked. That day, I realized something profound. My story didn't end in the dining room. It didn't end in the courtroom. It didn't end in rehab or on my wedding day. It kept branching out, touching people I'd never meet again. All because I survived. Because I spoke. Because I refused to let silence rewrite the truth. Dad turned 66 last month. We celebrated with chocolate cake in the kitchen. Alex leaned against the counter, Dad sat in his favorite chair, and I stood by the window, watching dusk settle over the yard. After the plates were cleared, Dad lingered in the dining room. I found him staring at the wall again. You okay? I asked softly. He nodded. Just thinking. About him? About everything. We stood together, facing the smooth plaster. Do you think he knows, I asked, what he threw away? Dad's voice was quiet. I think he knows, but accepting it, that's the part he struggles with. Jude always had trouble with acceptance. We shared a sad smile. Mom used to say that too. Pride was Jude's oldest shadow. It followed him through school, through work, through marriage, and straight into the courtroom where he stood and lied rather than admit the truth. Sometimes people say I should let go, that holding on to the past will only hurt me, but they misunderstand. I don't hold on to the pain. I hold on to the lesson. Some walls, once broken, stay broken. And that's okay, because people can rebuild, slowly, messily, beautifully. I'm not the woman I was before the injury, but I like who I am now. More patient, more honest, more aware of what matters, more capable of helping others carry their own scars. Alex and I talk about having kids someday. Not tomorrow, not next year, but maybe when the time feels right. Dad smiles when we tell him. Your mother would be thrilled, he always says. And somehow in those moments I feel her near. I didn't ask for any of this, but I survived all of it. And I learned the truth. You can't control what breaks you, but you can decide what you build from the pieces. This is the life I've built. A life not defined by violence, but by choice. Not shaped by trauma, but by resilience. Not overshadowed by my brother, but illuminated by the people who stayed. Some walls stay broken, but I didn't.